What do we have here? Codename D, aka the Undercover Progressive. What's the matter, Gumshoe? The dark and stormy night getting a little lonely out there?
How could I ever be lonely with your boys in blue shadowing my every move, Sergeant Corny? My ex gave me more freedom.
With you? I can see why.
Ouch.
Enough about your ex. Tell me about the staff.
What's to tell? It was a client. I stepped out for a moment. When I returned, I discovered his change in living status.
You? With a client?
I was just as shocked as you were.
I suppose you popped out to visit the dry cleaners.
As a matter of fact,
And while you were out, your client just happened to slip and fall on a couple of bullets you had lying around.
seems a more likely story than me killing my old client.
Meanwhile, I have an eyewitness spotting you fleeing the scene of the crime.
Which perfectly explains why your boys found me in my office. Your story has more holes in my budget.
Come on, Codename. Give me something to work with here.
Well, there is this video it was showing me. It was from a guy who called himself Sargon of Accad, and he was railing about the evils of the progressive group.
Alright, let's have a look at it.
It becomes self-evident as to why the Black Lives Matter protesters commandeering Bernie Sanders' platform is a problem for liberals. They didn't earn it, therefore they do not deserve it, and they certainly do not have the right to deny it to the person who did earn it based on their race.
Alright, Gumshoe, you're off the hook. For now. But don't leave town.
Are you sure? I know you guys are just trying to do your job. It'd be perfectly understandable if...
Sorry, Gumshoe. You're on your own with this one. Hey, Mac! Spring the private dick, will you? And be sure to give him his gun back. He's gonna need it.
Bernie Sanders himself. Given that the protesters interrupting Bernie Sanders and demanding the use of his platform hadn't earned it,
They haven't earned the right to speak. According to whose standards? To yours? Your context here is extremely selective, so allow me to restore the missing narrative for you. At the time these protests took place, Bernie Sanders was using an alternative meme to Black Lives Matter with All Lives Matter, in an attempt to be deliberately more inclusive to a wider array of minority groups. BLM took great exception to this because it was deliberately ignoring the issues that specifically faced the black community, specifically police brutality directed at black men, and the impunity with which police can use such force. They noted that politicians in the past have often used such collectivistic language in order to evade the issue in its entirety. I'll pause here to note the collectivist nature of All Lives Matter, and again note that BLM took issue with it. So by your reasoning, this makes BLM the liberals and Bernie Sanders the collectivist progressive. Yes, Sanders is a strong advocate for civil rights, but he is not perfect and still suffers from isolation which results from residing inside the Washington Beltway. BLM took such a strong objection that they decided it was necessary for stronger measures in order for their point to be made. It's hypocritical of you to dismiss the context of the speech simply because you find the means of the speech offensive. Shortly after this protest, he made a point to have a long sit-down with BLM activists and posted a strong platform in response to BLM demands. What you dismiss as a form of attack is just another form of critique that ended up making Bernie Sanders' platform that much stronger. And that is the whole point of free speech.
and it's the principle of equality of opportunity that gives liberals such a problem with affirmative action and quotas.
You ever notice that anyone who has a problem with affirmative action always has to throw in the concept of quotas, as if they're the same concept?
There's not really all that much to say about this. The very concept of a quota is in direct opposition to the concept of equality of opportunity.
I agree. It's a good thing it has absolutely nothing to do with affirmative action, then, isn't it?
There are many arguments against affirmative action, and I really think that Thomas Sowell, a black ex-Marxist's observations on this are really pertinent, and I hate to play the identity politics game, but he says that preferences primarily benefit minority applicants from middle and upper class backgrounds. At the same time, because admissions are a zero-sum game, preferences hurt poor whites and even many Asians, who we already know meet the admission standards in disproportionate numbers.
Zero sum is an argument that defends segregation and discrimination. Here's how it works. Suppose I run the numeral university of numbers. Each potential student is literally a number. Student number 1, student number 2, and so forth. It's a small school, so only have 10 seats for new students each year. No more and no less. In the past, I was allowed to openly discriminate, so only the even-numbered students need to apply. Odd-numbered students could not be enrolled no matter how qualified they were. Even the first student, student number 1, is locked out. This means that I can enroll the even-number students from number 2 to number 20. Today, I cannot discriminate. I have to take all students, both even and odd numbers. But I still only have 10 seats. So for each odd-numbered student I let into the numeral university, I have to bump off an even-numbered student from the end of the line that would have been qualified under the old system. This would be the zero-sum part. Was this unfair to those students? Why, yes. Yes, it was. But the greater injustice was to deny enrollment to the odd-numbered students simply because they were odd numbers. And if the rule was to give the seats to the most qualified students, that means student number 1 to student number 10, both even and odd numbers. So the racist response is to imagine some reason why the odd-numbered students were never qualified to attend the university in the first place. I wonder if Sargon would give us such a reason later.
If preferences were truly meant to remedy disadvantage, they would be given on the basis of disadvantage and not on the basis of race, because the basis of disadvantage is an individualistic position.
First, let me tease apart affirmative action from quotas. A quota is just what you might think it is. It is reserving X number of positions for applicants from specific ethnic groups and other classes. Quotas are an approach to secure racial and ethnic diversity, which is the idea that all ethnic groups and other classes are to be represented in appropriate proportions. If diversity is your goal, then there's nothing inherently wrong with quotas. Affirmative action, however, is a response to the discrimination that manifests itself in hiring and recruiting. It does this by statistically analyzing past hiring trends, collected after the fact, and comparing them against an objective hypothetical population the institution is expected to serve. This is where we come to Sargon's straw man regarding disadvantage. If quotas and affirmative action were to deal with disadvantage, then they would be based on disadvantage. But that's just it. Quotas deal with diversity, not disadvantage. Affirmative action deals with discrimination, not disadvantage. That's the straw man. It gets better. Racial diversity and equal opportunity are conflicting ideas. You cannot have a diverse population without discrimination, and you cannot practice equal opportunity employment without having the population skew one way or the other, something that affirmative action has to control for. You simply cannot have both. That's why most liberals and progressives tend to argue that equal opportunity is more important than diversity, or may even dismiss the benefits of diversity altogether. With most liberals and progressives already set against quotas, critics attempt to exploit the contradiction between the two by first falsely presenting the idea that they're equivalent concepts, and then using quotas to discredit affirmative action.
This article from 1997, where a professor is complaining that his black and Mexican American students were not academically competitive with white students at the nation's top universities. And yes, I can hear the deep inhalation from the progressives watching this video. But before you feel compelled to open your mouths and start branding people all sorts of labels, why don't we actually look at why he said that?
So why the preemptive butthurt? Probably because Sargon already knows that Lino Gargilia, that's the person he's quoting here, flat out says it's about race. Sargon even quoted it.
That his black and Mexican American students were not academically competitive with white students at the nation's top universities.
So Sargon tries to hand-wave away the overt racism by calling it just another label progressives like to slap onto people, as if predicting the accusation in advance somehow discredits the accusation itself.
His contention wasn't down to any kind of racial inferiority, but was the result primarily of cultural effects. They have a culture that seems not to encourage achievement. Failure is not looked upon with disgrace.
Cultural effects? How does Gargilia know this? Perhaps he's a sociologist making a keen insight into a student's behavior. Nope. Gargilia is a lawyer specializing in antitrust litigation, and he holds no relevant expertise into cultural studies or sociology. In other words, Gargilia doesn't know squat about culture and just simply pulled this out of his ass.
Now, I don't know whether he's right or wrong.
If you don't know if he was right or wrong, then why did you quote him? Don't you vet your sources before you use them?
But what we do know is that poverty doesn't exactly aid an academic career.
Because all black students are poor and all white students are not. Are you suggesting we should deny student enrollment based on income status? All you did here was swap one form of discrimination for another. It's true that poverty doesn't exactly aid in an academic career, but these challenges have nothing to do with their intellect. So what is Sargon trying to say here? Well, basically he's on a fishing expedition, trying to smear progressive ideology any way he can. Progressives, and liberals I would add, do embrace affirmative action, because it's a powerful statistical tool to combat institutional discrimination. So Sargon ends up using a pro-racist argument in order to make his point, probably without even realizing it. And going after progressivism is identity politics. It's jumping to conclusions as to what a person thinks and believes based on a single element, be it the color of their skin or a single label which they may choose to self-identify. Sargon ends up projecting his own shortcomings onto his target. The case in point is Sargon's objection to BLM's crashing of the Bernie Sanders rally. He says they didn't earn the right to speak simply because they're black. It never occurred to him that they might have stormed the stage because they might actually have something they wanted to say. It's his assumption alone that they were motivated by race. The night was as dark as the plot he found himself in. There were too many shadows, but one hid the only lead for him to follow, the witness that Sergeant McCorney mentioned. Aha! I know you are there. You may as well come out. No, not they. Please, leave me alone. They must leave me alone. Who are they? Is there more than one killer? Who did you see leaving my office? They did it. They left your office. Who did? No, not who. They. Oh boy, not this again.